Good morning. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Today I'm doing just a quick wrap up of the books that I read in November. I read 9 books, which is really exciting for me. This was the reason that I started my booktube channel. I guess at the very end of September, beginning of October. I really wanted to kind of hold myself accountable and encourage myself to read more, but in a fun way. So before that, I was reading, maybe in a good month I'd hit 4 books. And a lot of months I'd only read 1 or 2 books because I was just really bad at carving out the time to do it. I would just think, oh, well, I'm so busy. I have a job and a kid. I don't have time to read. And I kept reminding myself of some quote somebody said at some point, which is like, if you really care about it, you'll make time for it. And so I decided to make time for it, try out this booktube thing, and see if it stayed fun. I don't want booktube to become a stressful thing, and so far it's working. I read 9 books in November, so I'm very, very happy with that. So here is my stack of physical books. So that's 7 books that I read in physical format, and then I did have 1 audiobook and 1 Kindle book. A lot of these books I've already done a standalone review for, so I'll just link that in the cards for the books for which it's relevant. All right, so just going through some of these quickly. So just want to start out with I think my top pick of the month. The book that I enjoyed the most is this art book, Captured Motion, The Sculpture of Harriet Whitney Frischmuth. And this is a book that I read for Nonfiction November. It was my pick for the movement prompt. And I just loved having a book that was a combination of history about, so it was a biography of the artist's life for almost half of the page count. I want to say it was a biography of the artist's life, and then essays on how sculpture is made, the relationship between the sculptor and the foundries where the bronze sculptures were cast, which just covered a lot of early 20th century history because the foundries were really impacted by the 2 world wars. And so then, of course, the artists were really impacted by the 2 world wars. So I just thought this was fascinating. And then half the book is just these gorgeous photos of her sculpture, which I just really fell in love with. As you can kind of tell from these pictures, kind of her theme that carries throughout most of her work is the idea of captured motion, as the title says. She was a connoisseur of early 20th century dance. And her main model that she used for most of her work was a dancer. And so the dancer would come, put on a phonograph, dance in Frischmuth's studio, and when the dancer struck a pose that Frischmuth really liked, that's the pose that they would model. And so the dancer actually had quite a bit of kind of artistic input into Frischmuth's sculpture as well, since she was the one really coming up with the poses and trying new things out. So I just really enjoyed this book. It was really fun to read and really lovely to look at. So just real quick, my other books for Nonfiction November, which have all been reviewed on their own. We have Buzz by Thor Hansen, which is a popular science treatment of the nature and necessity of bees, as it says in the subtitle there. I gave this book 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. So please go check out my video if you haven't and want to learn more. Black Livingston, A True Tale of Adventure in the 19th Century Congo by Pagan Kennedy. This was also a 5-star book for me. It was short and beautifully written, and I thought it was a good, especially for me, kind of introduction to the history of the Congo under the Belgians. And then 46 Days, Keeping Up with Jennifer Pharr Davis on the Appalachian Trail. This is a woman who set the record for the fastest trip down the Appalachian Trail. She had to do it in under 47 days, and so she was able to do it in 46 days. And the Appalachian Trail, for those who don't know, is over 2,000 miles of hiking trail on the east coast of the United States. So she did over 2,000 miles in 46 days. It's incredible. All right, then some other books that I got to. I had a disappointing fiction month. I was more focused on nonfiction because of Nonfiction November. So I read The Guinevere Deception by Kiersten White, which is a YA book that started out with a really cool premise. In this premise, Guinevere is not who she appears to be. She's actually a protege / daughter of Merlin, and Merlin has been banished from Camelot, and Guinevere is sent to Camelot to protect Arthur from an unknown magical threat. The premise was awesome. The book did not live up to its premise. That's all I'll say for now. If you're interested in it, you can check out my review video. I did like the writing. I thought this book was quite good until I got to about 75% of the way through it. And then there was a big twist that just ruined the book for me. So that was disappointing. I also read a fantasy book on my Kindle called The Color of Vengeance, which is the second book in Rob J. Hayes' The Ties That Bind series, which is a grimdark adult fantasy. And for some reason, I keep reading it. So I finished the second book and I've now started the third book. It's a trilogy. And it is something about the characters, something about the writing where I do feel invested. I want to know what happens. I kind of like the characters a little bit, but they're also not really great I don't mean great characters. They're not great people because it's a grimdark fantasy. So yeah, so there is something that's keeping me reading it, but I think I gave the second book 2 stars, and I think the third book will also probably be a 2-star book just based on how it's going so far. I'm only like 10-15% in, and my main gripe with the books is there's just no overarching plot or theme, and that would be fine if that really felt like what the author was going for. You know, that could be kind of a commentary you know, on life, especially in a fantasy book. You know, most people are not in a dramatic fight of good versus evil, so it would be kind of cool to have a fantasy book about just people doing their thing, I guess. But he's not going for that. There's like these hints of like this overarching thing, and it's almost like he was kind of trying to put it in, but he just got so distracted by all the day-to-day stuff going. I don't know. So there's no yeah, there's like hints of an overarching kind of plot or theme that has yet to actually be dealt with. So I will do a wrap-up video of the last 2 books in the trilogy, just for anybody who likes fantasy and wants to hear me criticize some fantasy. I'll do that sometime this month. So anyway, those were my 2 disappointing fiction books. And then I just, I had 2 more nonfiction books that I read in physical form. So Do You Mind If I Cancel by Gary Janetti. This is a book that I heard about through Lana's channel, Lana Ex Libris. This is just a bunch of humorous essays. They're autobiographical humorist essays about the author's particularly younger life, so growing up and into the 20s, so growing up as a gay man, and then being a gay man trying to make it in the writing scene in New York City in his 20s. And a lot of these were hilarious. They were also really poignant, and sometimes more poignant than funny. And they were all very short, so this was a great book for me because I would just pick it up and read a few pages while my daughter was playing. This was a 4-star book for me. I just really enjoyed it. Gary Janetti is a writer for the show Will and Grace, which is the thing that kind of piqued my interest in this book. And if you like the show Will and Grace, I think you will love this book. Like, it is very clear that some of the writing teams, I don't know if I want to say inspiration, but like some of the stories that they draw, some of the character traits for the characters Will and Jack, both clearly come from parts of Gary Janetti's life. There was one essay in particular that just had me cracking up. It's about gay men going to the gym in the 1990s and how much of like a subcultural thing that was. You just had to go to the gym, and then you know, meeting people at the gym or trying to meet people at the gym and trying to get people's number at the gym. And if you're a Will and Grace fan, that's a recurring setting and a recurring gag on the show, is the experiences of Will and Jack kind of in different gyms and the people that they meet. So I was just dying for that essay. But yeah, so this is really good if you want just like a quick read that'll make you laugh. And a couple of these essays get closer to making you cry. So he's just at the age where he kind of entered his really late teens in like the late 80s. So he missed, in that essay, he's talking about how he missed kind of the worst years of the AIDS pandemic in the gay community in New York City. But he was aware of it because you know, all of a sudden a whole generation of men was missing. And so he talks about that, and that essay in particular was extremely hard hitting. So yeah, this was a great book. I'm not going to do a standalone review because it's short. It's funny, it's poignant. There's not a lot to dig into there. Then the last physical book that I read is called Practicing Peace, a devotional walk through the Quaker tradition by Catherine Whitmire. And this book is just, you can see it's just quotes and selections from different Quaker writings. And this was just really nice to read in 2020. I've been working on it for a long time and just finally finished it in November, just picking it up and reading a few quotes or selections here and there, but it's all about just having a very kind of holistic view of society and politics, and looking at everything through a justice and equity lens. That's something Quakers do a lot, is thinking about who is being unheard and bearing witness to that. So this was just a really nice kind of grounding reminder in 2020 of the fact that there's a whole community that I'm kind of part of that thinks about the world in that way. It was a little heavy on God for me. I mean, as a devotional walk, I think I've made allusion to the fact before that on this channel that I'm Quaker, and also allusion to the fact that I'm not religious. So for me, Quakerism is more of like a way of life. I appreciate the focus on social justice and working to better your community, but I'm not really there for the God part. So this had a lot of God in it, which is fine, but you know, regardless of where people are getting their inspiration for this attitude and way of thinking about the world, the fact that they're doing it to me is what matters. So I did really enjoy this. So if anybody else would be interested in hearing more about this, I'm not going to do a standalone video, but if you're the sort of person that likes books of kind of quotes and selections, especially ones that are really focused on peace and meaning that holistically, so both kind of inner peace for yourself, but then also looking out at the world, not just the ending of active conflict, but what we call positive peace. So really thinking about the structures and the long-term problems, policies, institutions that continue to perpetuate injustice, and that's part of peace work too. So yeah, if you want to know more about this, just ask me in the comments. I'm happy to talk more about it, but I'm not going to do a review on it. And then finally, the final book I'll just talk about is the audiobook, The Silk Roads, which I did a standalone review on, which I just thought was a great, like, broad treatment of the entire history of the Middle East and Central Asia, going back several thousand years. And as I said in that video, it was just beautifully written. I felt like I got a really good survey, and it just seemed like a great jumping off point for identifying particular points in time or particular regions that are now of interest to me that I'd like to follow up on with additional reading. So I think that perfectly encapsulates the idea of kind of a survey history book. You know, I got kind of a broad brush picture and some guidance for where I might want to drill in the future. So those are the 9 books that I read in November. I'm really happy with my 9 books. I have a lot of books I want to read in December. I've been really heavy on the nonfiction so far on this channel, and I love reading nonfiction. I'm really happy that I've been able to do that. But I will, now that nonfiction November is over, be transitioning a little more into having heavier fiction and fantasy sci-fi side of things. I might do a December TBR. I haven't decided, so I would go through some of what I'm hoping to read this month in that video, if I do it. Or I might just do it piecemeal through the month. Anyway, thanks for sticking around if you were interested in this summary of what I read this month. And if you are new here and you like what I'm doing, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. I'd love to see you popping up again, and thanks for watching. Bye.